We live?
Yeah.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for coming, everybody. Let's go ahead and start our morning with Danny Stewart's going to give us an opening prayer, and then Spencer Viernes will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our dear Father in heaven, we are grateful this morning to be gathered here on this beautiful day to participate in this meeting. We're grateful for this beautiful facility to meet in and this beautiful community and this county which we call home. Thankful for the rain that we've recently received and pray that we may continue to receive the rain and moisture that will help us meet the needs of our valley here. Pray for those who have experienced fires and flooding and disasters. They may be assisted and blessed by their neighbors, and that we may be a help to them as well. Invite thy Spirit to please be in attendance at this meeting this morning, that those things which will be discussed may be considered thoughtfully, and that things will be done which will best help the residents of this county. Grateful for the county leadership, for the staff, and for all those who work in the community's benefit. And we invite thy Spirit to be with us. We express our gratitude and pray these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. Entertain a motion to approve the minutes from our meeting dated August 10th, 2026.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Entertain a motion for approval for claims for payment for August 10th, 2026 through August 23rd, 2026.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Let's go ahead and move to department reports. And we've got nobody here to report from the start. So let's go to Fleet. Oh. Sorry.
But Wade can go first.
All right. We'll start with, obviously, the clerk is sitting right next to me and not out. I had tunnel vision there for a second. Sorry. Don't sneak up on me like that.
Good morning. I just wanted to go over my budget. Everything's in pretty good shape. We actually did spend all of our small equipment budget for clerk, purchased new chairs for the deputies. And then there's one line item that is over, and that is postage and shipping. Our budget is $150, and we've spent $387. I have lowered that over the years, and I'll probably need to raise that back up in future budgets. But overall, we're well under budget in clerk and elections. We're doing fine on the Special Service District number 3 budget, and I won't talk about the sewer budget, but everything is fine there. We're more of a pass-through on that. The Government Data Protection Act and GRAMA have been progressing as far as getting our processes in place. We will come before the commission before the end of the year and make a report, but I really appreciate Sam and Jen and all the work that's gone into that. The election is upcoming. The database, it will be mailed out soon. The ballot the programming has begun on that, and the ballots will be mailed on October 13th, which is 21 days before the election. Grateful we have a new deputy, and I know that George and Mike, anybody in the fire world will know Jamie Mehmet, who is a volunteer firefighter for her father over there in Paraguna. And in fact, coming back from Parowan on Saturday, noticed that the Paraguna truck was out there with the Parowan trucks on a brush fire along I-15. And I didn't see Jamie, but I did see Royce. And then finally for me, LEPC, the Local Emergency Preparedness Committee, we've been working on a project to help with Tier 2 tracking. That has to do with hazardous substances, especially that fire may have to deal with. And so we've been working with our GIS department and Cassie Meredith and Cedar Fire to begin building a database wherein, and you would think this was automatic and the state has made an attempt at this, but basically that there is a GIS layer that shows everything that we've got tracked for Tier 2, so that they know that there's 1,000 pounds of perchlorate or something when they roll up on a scene, so that they can help manage that safely. So that's what we've got going so far. Any questions for me this morning?
How's the response been on the verified voter ID? I keep getting texts and emails on that. This is your last chance to sign up to verify.
Oh, yeah, that's actually not coming from us, but yeah, if you have the star on your ID, that is sufficient. And then under HB 300 from last year's legislative session, folks will have to choose whether they're going to vote in person or by mail.
So what's the response been on that?
It's about 90%, 95% to continue receiving a ballot, which is about the same usage that the state overall has had folks use the by-mail ballots. And the vast majority are dropped in drop boxes.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Did George leave the room again? He did.
I told him I was going to talk about him.
So Wade?
He's just there.
Huh?
I can see his arm. George!
It's your turn.
I can see his arm.
I thought I was home there for a minute. I recognize that tone. Give me a second.
Thank you, sir.
Sorry about this, Commissioners.
You'll be excused this time. You'll be forgiven once.
Thought Wade was going to go before me.
He stood up twice to come up here and had to sit back down. So
Well,
I think next time he's going for the door.
you got to take into account a man of his advanced age can't stand up and sit down too many times. You got to take advantage of his up.
he's not listening.
He's not even listening.
I know. So I don't, good morning, Commissioners. I don't have a completed budget for you this morning. There was some, for the first time in 8 years, I've had to do a budget adjustment. And the reason behind that was when we first developed the budget back in October of last year, I hadn't factored in an employee yet, and that's created some small problems with travel and with my vehicle maintenance and stuff. And when Luke gets all that straightened out, I'll be able to. Overall, the budget's in good shape, but there are some areas where I'm slightly over because of travel training and budget and fuel, the vehicle maintenance and fuel. So otherwise, the budget's in relatively good shape. So going to my report, you'll notice that there's a lot of meetings. People ask me occasionally, especially my family, what is it you do for a living? And I say I do two things. I go to meetings and I go to disasters. Of the two, I prefer disasters. They're better organized, and at the end I feel like I've accomplished something. But I do go to a lot of meetings. So they're all listed there. Some of the highlight meetings was probably Rocky Mountain Power called me at one point and said they wanted to bring some of their executives down from Idaho and discuss with me how I felt about their power outages and any recommendations I had. So I met with them, and they asked me what recommendations for power outages, and I said, well, let's not have them, realizing that that was not realistic. They're going to have them. But I stressed to them that they need to be a little less proactive. If a fire's 10 miles away, we don't need to start cutting the power off to people 10 miles away from that fire. Let's be a little bit more.
What was their response?
Well, they all sat there and shook their heads like they were in agreement, and I know that's as far as it went, because they're going to do whatever the corporate structure tells them to do, and I think that they are extremely gun shy given the cost of the lawsuits in Oregon, Washington State, and California.
So that's the driving factors.
That's absolutely the driving
fear
factor.
of litigation.
Yep. Litigation is absolutely right. They wouldn't be doing any of this. They wouldn't be spending money on any of this if they hadn't been litigated against in the tune of several $billion. So, so that was probably the biggest meeting I had. Several exercises. Enix City. My econ people had their summer field days, Cedar Airport. Cassie and I responded to the Summit fire, the Sawmill fire, and then Spencer Rollo and I spent an entire day. The Chokecherry fire was actually in Nevada, but there was a point at which it looked like it was going to come over the ridgeline into Iron County, and all those people in Hamlin Valley were threatened. So he and I spent I got to say for me, a harrowing day wandering around Hamlin Valley, warning people to watch the ridgeline because it's a spooky neighborhood, to say the least. Especially if you're in a marked vehicle wearing a badge and a gun, that's kind of scary territory. But we managed to get everybody warned, and so, and we found out there's people living out there that we weren't quite aware of. So, that was interesting.
Just figured that out, George.
So is that
Yeah,
more?
well, I knew that there were people out there that we didn't know were living out there. I just didn't know exactly where they were living at. So now we've got a location.
So the desert scene of Hamlin Valley is similar to the jungles of Vietnam?
Well, they're taller. They're armed much the same way. Have much the same attitude towards me. So we did some assistance. I assisted the clerk's office with ballot collection again, and we'll be doing that again in November.
We're grateful.
And we were able to get some traffic barriers for Cedar PD for one of Cedar's activities. We've got some regional assets now that I was able to call on and get traffic barriers so they could close some of their streets. Cassie and I both attended some, the region bought a Genesis evacuation software so that we can set up evacuation zones and things like that in case we have to evacuate certain parts of the county. And we both attended that training. She'll be going on for some further training in that because that probably will fall into her wheelhouse if we have a large wildfire where we have to evacuate a lot of people.
Can I shout out Cassie real quick? I appreciate her social media posts and anything you put on there's information that a lot of people don't know about, so it's great to see. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure why I need to show up anymore. I mean, she pretty much
You're here.
Don't get any ideas. Yeah. No, the short blonde accountant wants me to keep drawing a paycheck, so.
You just need to have a sign made by the sign department that says, "Do you want to talk to the man in charge or the woman who really knows what's going on?"
Exactly.
That's what you need to do next.
So as far as grants go, I submitted the final report for the 2025 EMPG, so that check should be coming in. And I submitted our 2026 notice of intent to apply for that grant. So a couple of big items that aren't on that list I want to highlight. The health department, the state health department, offered all the counties in the state an opportunity if they would get a bus that was capable of holding 16 patients, that they would pay for a kit to turn that into a large mobile ambulance. Salt Lake County agreed, and they couldn't find not one other county in the state that would agree to do it. And so they called me and said, "What about you?" And I said, "Yep, absolutely, we'll take it." And so then I had to go find a bus. And thanks to Commissioner Blake, Dr. Blodgett, and Dr. Hatch, the school superintendent, I was able to get a school bus. So I now the proud owner of a large yellow bus that we're going to turn into a large ambulance. So, and we've already started working on that. I got $5,000 from the region in order to replace some parts on it that needed to be replaced. And I got another an agreement with the health department to throw in $30,000 to start refitting that into a large ambulance. I guess that's it. Other than that, I haven't been doing a lot. Just been quiet. I just wanted to cover a few things on Cassie's. She's been working really hard on the Cedar Highlands project to get a building up there to put a couple of fire engine and an engine and a tender in. It's kind of at a stop at the moment, but she's worked really hard on doing that. There's been some slow up with the engineers. She did a lot of work getting the WUI map, working with all the fire departments, all the cities, and getting that WUI map submitted to the state, our corrected one from theirs. And she's done that. And she's been working on evacuations, setting up social media, and getting people used to going into emergency management. So she's been working really hard on a lot of projects. Any questions?
No questions. Again, just thank you. I see these guys a lot. They're always got their nose to the grindstone working on a project. So just
Shoulder to the wheel.
I appreciate you guys.
Shoulder to the wheel, nose to the grindstone. It's hard to work in that position, but
Yeah.
all right,
you.
thanks.
All right, Wade, I think we're finally going to let you come up.
Good morning.
Morning.
So I threw you off back there when I raised my hand. Trying to distract you from letting John go. All right, so the fleet department budget overall remains under. There was an unforeseen issue right before the budget hearings last year that I caught after the fact, and had discussed it with Lucas and Commissioner Blake, but my spreadsheet that I used to tally the amount for vehicles, there was a glitch in the spreadsheet somewhere, and I still don't know how it happened, but there was 5 or 6 vehicles that were left out of that calculation, and so there's going to have to be a budget adjustment for them. And I don't know if Lucas is presenting that today. We haven't bought those vehicles yet, but they're on their way. Some of them are on their way today and tomorrow. So, but other than that, the budget's still under. Year to date, so our work orders, we've completed 752 work orders so far. Those categories include accidents, maintenance and repairs, graphics, miscellaneous projects, recalls, registrations, reservations, upfitting, and warranty work. So of the 752 completed work orders, 66 were related to vehicle upfitting, 686 covered all the other fleet services and responsibilities. The aging department, so we had 2 transit vans that were replacing the bigger buses that they've got, those shuttle buses. They're pretty big. They're hard to maneuver. They're gas guzzlers. And so we were able to replace those with the Ford Transit vans. And we completed the fits on those for the ADA, the wheelchair lifts. And then we've got one completed. We're just trying to modify the entrance on that thing, on the side door for the people to get in and out of, trying to make it easiest and as safest we can, because those other shuttle buses, they had some issues where people were tripping and falling and the steps were too far apart. So we're trying to make this easier for them, so to get in and exit. Meals on Wheels vehicles, we were able to get, and I think we've already discussed this, but we were able to get that grant from the 5-county Association of Government, that Stephanie kind of coordinated that. We had an issue. We ordered the 2 vehicles for that, but there was a issue with constraints from Ford, so those got kicked out. So we looked around trying to find some more, and they'd sent me some more. Cedar Motor Company had sent me some more bids on some vehicles they'd found in Texas and California. But the upfitting on those vehicles is happening in Indiana. The company out there, there's not very many that do this, but I didn't want to have to. It's $3,000 or $4,000 more per vehicle, and then who's going to have to ship them to Indiana? So I was like, I just better wait. And so we had to tell the ordering bank for the 2027 vehicles came out, and so I was able to get those ordered. And there was a difference of, I think it was $304 per vehicle, so it wasn't horrible. So the original match for the county per vehicle was $13,354, and the updated match is $13,658. So the total county match $27,316. So the total cost for both of those vehicles upfitted is $151,340. So that was a pretty good deal for those. And those Meals on Wheels trucks are, the oldest one I think is a 2004. And we're starting to have more issues with the refrigerant systems on those because they have 2 different compressors on those vehicles. And so 2 different condensers. And we're just, it seems like every other week we have one in there that we're trying to repair because it's not cooling or heating. So the sheriff's office, we've completed 2 vehicle outfits. That's full patrol outfits, and have started working on 2 more additional. We have 12 more to do this year, so we're going to try to focus more on that.
How long does it take to do one?
That's a good question. So if
You distracted. too many
well,
times.
it's either the maintenance either goes behind or the upfitting does. So if we were able to just completely stay on one the whole time, about 2.5 weeks, maybe even sooner than that. So
And you have 12 to do?
We've got 12 more to do, so I've got Dave and Kelton actually both working on 2, and then Troy's gonna be doing some of the general maintenance stuff. Trying to get him into doing some more of the other technical things. He's new, so he's doing really good. He's a pretty smart guy, so we should be able to move him in to help out on some of the bigger things that happen. But yeah, we're going good. And then stuff like a bus comes in. Hey, will you remove the seats out of this bus? It needs to be replaced because it's leaking. Oh, sure.
He's not even here today. He's not even here.
Oh, we don't mind helping out. But
George!
You know he's lurking back there.
we did take him for a ride in it when we brought it back. Just around the yard once, so I made him ride in it. So, yeah, we're going to focus on trying just to get a bunch of those upfits done and see how it goes. But like I said, our last order of vehicles, we had 8 more Toyotas that were coming in, and so they're supposed to be here this week. So that should be the rest of our, other than the 2 Meals on Wheels that will be later, hopefully by the end of November. So other than that, things are just peachy. So any questions?
Nope. Thank you.
Thanks.
Will you check your box before you go?
Yeah, lots of
You've had-
recalls.
Yeah, well, yeah.
we've
Ford
got like
sent you a
50
lot of
recalls.
love letters. Yeah.
So, okay, thanks.
Jennifer with HR.
Good morning. Currently, we are well below budget. We do not foresee any anticipated budget issues or concerns for the remainder of this year. Since our last HR report on May 26, 2026, we have posted, interviewed, and hired 17 positions. We've had 12 internal promotions and transfers, and we are currently in the process of recruiting and hiring multiple full-time corrections deputies, 3 full-time appraiser positions in the assessor's office, 1 full-time judicial assistant in the justice court, and 1 full-time technician with IT. Points of interest, our present turnover for 2026 so far is 9.27%, or 23 positions, and in comparison to this time last year, turnover was 8.47, or 21 positions. We're currently starting our insurance renewal discussions with our broker, and we'll be meeting with our insurance committee in the next few weeks to kind of talk that over and discuss our options. And I've included a chart of kind of where our insurance lies and what we're spending the most on in the back. We've had some milestone anniversaries this quarter, celebrating 5 years. Andy McMullen in the tourism department, Devin Whitney in the sheriff's office corrections, Jerry Torcell in the assessor's DMV, and Luke Little in the auditor's office. Celebrating 15 years, Stephanie Orton in the tourism department, Tom Bird in the sheriff's office patrol. And I'm going to say this until the end of this year, Terry Palmer for 30 years, because I forgot last time. Workers' comp I discuss every time. I've included some charts on where we're spending the most of our workers' comp, on what type of accidents, that kind of thing. Our EMOD increased a tiny bit this year to 0.89%, which was 0.76 last year. And as long as we're below 1.0, we should be pretty okay with our insurance premiums on that. So do you have any questions for me?
I don't.
Okay, perfect.
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Okay, public defender. I do not see her here.
Would you like me to call her? That's usually how she
Does she
She's
have,
on the
she's on the agenda
agenda.
later, I think, isn't she?
Yeah, I know she gets the email.
Yeah, she's on the agenda, so maybe
That
she's
we
just going
can
to cover
show
it then.
All right, so we can get a report then. So before we go to commission reports, let's take a minute to let Carson Brown introduce himself with Senator Curtis's office.
Howdy, Commissioners. Good seeing you again. For those of you who knew Jeff Razors, he used to cover Southern Utah for Senator Curtis. I just recently came and replaced him. I've spent the past 2 years working for Celeste Malloy out in DC. And as fun as living in a massive city with insane bureaucracy was, my wife and I, we're both originally from Southern Utah, jumped at the chance to get back home. So we're excited to be back here. I've been on the job for a couple of weeks and have loved it. In terms of legislative report, just going to start off with, obviously, Iron County has had a few fires in the past, this past fire season. We've been keeping track of, obviously, Widemouth and Cotton up north of y'all. We've learned a lot of important lessons when it comes to working with FEMA, as well as SBA. And, heaven forbid if anything happens, because we're still we're right smack dab in the middle of fire season. If anything happens your way, we're happy to coordinate or assist however we can. Other updates, Fix Our Forest Act, which my boss, Senator Curtis, is sponsoring out in the Senate. We're incredibly gung-ho about getting that passed as soon as possible. What that will do is allow for additional logging rights to be had in fire shed areas to reduce fire risk for communities, as well as obviously, increasing logging and SRS funding. We're currently working. It currently has passed the House. It has the endorsement of the Western Caucus out in D.C., chaired by Congresswoman Malloy. It's passed committee in the Senate, so we're excited to get that to the floor as soon as we can. There are some concerns being raised, but we're still working through those. But excited to hopefully prevent more fires and have the federal government better manage and partner with local communities. Otherwise, other legislation is the state-sponsored visa pilot program that my boss is introducing. It's similar to a bill passed in Utah about 15 years ago that would allow for states to pass legislation allowing for a certain amount of visas to be distributed based off of industry. Back when I worked for Celeste Malloy and handling workforce and labor issues, it was really interesting to see that kind of or that issue being played out in rural areas. We had then Department of Labor Secretary Chavez DeRemer come down to Salt Lake, and we had rural folks from obviously home building, construction, agriculture, and recreation and tourism to come out and talk about their issues with immigration programs. So we're excited to work with federalism and allow for states to engage more with those issues. But otherwise, happy to coordinate on any issues that you guys are having with federal agencies or answer any of your questions that you guys might have.
Just give me a general sense. How does he feel about the Save Our Forest Act and the support he's getting? Is he optimistic that that's going to happen? Or
incredibly optimistic. It's incredibly bipartisan and passed committee on the Senate side, 8 to 10, I think, all but 2 opposing. Again, incredibly bipartisan. Shouldn't have a problem passing the 60 vote threshold. Would love to get that done by the end of the Congress. Senator Curtis has raised some questions and concerns. We're currently working with him, but again, we really hope to get this passed and get this signed by the end of the year.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
That you don't have to answer. I'm going to ask it cryptically.
Okay.
There's been one major holdup in that. Is that issue been addressed, or is there any movement on that issue?
I think I know what you're referring to. I know that we've got more clarification about what concerns are being raised, but we're still currently working through those. But yeah, if you want to reach out to the senior senator and get more clarification and maybe answer any questions that he might have from the Iron County perspective, you're more than welcome to.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you, commissioners. I appreciate it. I think you all have my contact information. If not, I'm more than happy to share my phone number with y'all. I do have to leave here in about 5 minutes to head over to Garfield County, but I'm happy to coordinate and assist however I can.
Good to meet you. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you
Carson.
for coming in.
Thank you.
Let's go ahead and move on to commission reports. Paul, are you ready?
Yeah, I don't have a lot. I just attended my Board of Health meeting this last week and our steering committee. Those are always good meetings. Our Darren Bushman, our executive director for the 5 county association governments, has been a breath of fresh air for his leadership, and he's doing a terrific job. And that's all I have.
Okay, Mike.
I got a few things. On August 11th, Commissioner Robinson and I attended the congressional ride set up by 5 county and 6 county. Met with representatives we had commissioners from 11 counties. We also had congressional representatives from offices on the East Coast, which is really important. We had congressional representatives from Minnesota, Pennsylvania, and a number of others. We met at Pine Lake over in Garfield County, rode up to Powell Point, hiked out onto the point. Our Congresswoman Malloy was able to give some really good legislative update on public lands and just the impact. Reg Johnson from the state gave some really good information just on the impacts of legislative decisions and presidential mandates on our public lands. It's really good to have those folks come out and actually put eyeballs on public lands. A lot of these guys from the East Coast just see trees. When you put them up on Powell Point and you can see 2 million acres laid out in front of you, it was funny to watch some of those folks not want to get within about 50 yards of the edge. So that was just a really good opportunity. Ken and I, Danny Stewart went with us, and we adopted Nathan Tenney from the Congresswoman Malloy's office into our ride with us. We had some really great conversations, and it was really good. This is our last airport board meeting. We actually were able to have a very lengthy and spirited discussion on trying to move forward on the controlled tower project. They say we're the 3rd busiest airport in the state, and we don't have any air traffic control. It's getting scary. I've worked with both Layton Construction, who's doing St. George's project, along with Dustin. I can't remember Dustin's last name. He's the airport manager in St. George, who are both really willing to help our airport kind of jumpstart that project. So hopefully we can get a little bit of movement on that. I had the opportunity to play in the Cedar City Chamber Golf Tournament, representing economic development. Thank you, David, I haven't swung a club in like 5 years, and I did well enough to keep me coming back maybe. So it's been a minute. The injuries have kind of healed. It didn't hurt like it used to, so that's a great opportunity just to rub shoulders, and it's a really good networking. They got lots of business folks, and it's always good to have those conversations. I met with the chairs of the TRT and TRCCA boards, which are hotel and restaurant tax boards, along with John Oglesby, the director of the Utah Summer Games, and Maria Twitchell, our director of tourism, just to talk about projects. We work very closely together, talk about progress on projects already underway, as well as upcoming projects. On the 20th, I had an opportunity to travel to Eagle Mountain City again with the chamber and economic development. There were also commissioners from Juab County there. We were able to meet with the city, economic development, Mayor Jared Gray. We also met with representatives from QTS, which is a data center project, as well as Layton Construction, and were able to tour their construction of the QTS data center complex. That was super eye-opening, just as far as the scale and the organization and everything that goes along with that. They were extremely open to any questions, any concerns. They all kind of bent over backwards to facilitate answering questions. I know, have they provided, they're going to provide information. Did that?
I don't think they've sent it yet.
Okay. So there'll be their presentation, some numbers and stuff that will be available. They were going to kind of coordinate that through David. Then on the 21st, John Oglesby, Maria, and I met again just to talk kind of intimately about Utah Summer Games. We were able to look at some numbers. We were able to look at some needs, some really specific needs for specific events, all with the mind of what's going to benefit the community, both for projects that need to be completed, but opportunities for local kids, local athletes, as well as how it all plays into economic development. So we had a really good sit down. That was it. Those are the highlights.
Thank you. As Mike mentioned, I had the opportunity to go out to Powell Point with the delegation of staff, interns and staff from many different offices across the U.S. and expose them to the opportunity to look at what we're dealing with out here in the West as far as the vastness of some of these national monuments and how they need to be managed. So that was a great opportunity to spend some time with them and get to know some of them. And as Mike mentioned, the information was very good, and it's just good to stand there and get an idea of the vastness of what that is. So there's been some huge legislative, they're not legislative, there's been some huge executive decisions made recently on those and on public lands and forest and roadless areas, and it's issues that need to be addressed to better manage our public lands. So I'm excited to see those. Also went to a tour of Align Steel. Saw some of the work that they do for the airline industry and the defense industry. A lot of what I think he quoted as saying 98% of the jet engine on an A-10 is manufactured here in Cedar City. So that was pretty cool to see, and they're kicking out about one a month, he said. So that was fun to see. Also attended the jail meeting. Things are progressing there very nicely. It's great to see that project coming together in the administration building and figure out how that's all going to fit together, and the layout of that building is really, really cool to see. Multiple phone calls with different entities trying to do projects with Iron County. We'll have a presentation later on today from E3. Spent some time on the phone with Spencer, and it's always good to talk through that and kind of try to wrap my head around what this is and the opportunities that it presents to the county. And then just a real quick shout out to the attorney's office for the conviction on the homicide that occurred this week. That was very, very rewarding to see that take place. Countless hours of I'm sure grueling work that's gone into that, and so just a big shout out to the attorney's office on that, and then also in the attorney's office, Dallin Brooks attended what was it, Sam?
It was a week of hell, SWAT school.
A SWAT. That's right, SWAT school.
What the hell?
Yeah.
Nice.
And obviously, if you know Dallin, he excelled in that and came out as the top recipient or the top.
He was the fastest on the O course.
Yeah.
The cops.
So that was great to see. There's a good article in the Iron County Today paper about that, and my son said, "Well, yeah, Dallin's an animal. Of course, he's going to do well at that." So.
Dallin was one of my Sunday school kids back in the day. I take partial credit.
Yeah, I don't stand in Dallin's way is all I would admonish. So that was really good to see. And that's all I've got. So we'll take a 10-minute break and we'll start back up at 10 o'clock. 13-minute, I guess. We'll take a 10. We'll start back up at 10 o'clock. come back to this.
What part of Colorado?
Dolores.
You run your cows out there?
It's crazy.
Dolores, isn't that over by the Dewey Bridge?
Just north of Cortez. Okay, John, we're everybody's seated and ready except Sam.
Commissioner, go ahead.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started back up. Thank you for your attendance. Agenda item number 1 is a public hearing, discussion, and possible approval of proposed zone change to the Iron County zoning map. Zone change from RA 20 rural agriculture 20 acre to R1 residential 1 acre on approximately 20 acres addressed as 3831 West, 4000 North, Cedar City, Utah. Applicant is Scott Day and presented by Brett.
Good morning, Commissioners. So just a general idea to get us where the project's at. So it is located on 4000 North. So it's between 4100 West and Lund Highway. So here's a close-up of the property. It is a 20-acre piece of property. So I would say it's about 5 acres of that 20 that's currently developed right now. A couple homes on the property. Everything else remains vacant right now. So the existing zoning on the property, again, is rural agriculture, 20 acre. You can see surrounding it, you've got some additional to the east, west, and south is also RA 20 to the north. You've got a R1 zone property. So there's an approved preliminary subdivision on that piece of property, Valley Stratton. It's a 40-acre piece right there. And then you've also got some R1/2 in the vicinity as well, some A20 a little bit further to the west. So just north of the project, you're obviously probably familiar with the Equestrian Trails Ranch project. So these two parcels here are actually part of that phase 1 of that development. So that'll kind of, I guess, get your bearings of what's kind of in the surrounding as well. So the proposed zoning is, again, to that R1 zoning designation to align with the property to the north, the 40 acres to the north. So as far as sewer and water infrastructure, there is existing sewer and water that runs along 4000 North. One thing to consider, obviously, with that this would be on the 4500 West line. That's what it's obviously been titled, but the county does have limited connections to that line. So that's just one thing to consider as well. With the Equestrian Trails Ranch project, with that project, it may actually exceed our total number of connections. But again, the way that we do it is kind of a first come, first serve. So anyway, so that's just obviously an item of consideration. And then again, the water line is through Cedar Valley Water Conservancy. It does run just right there along 4000 North. So again, we kind of went over these, but it's the 13 evaluation criteria. A couple that are highlighted there are just the adjacency to that existing zone, which they are to the north. And then also I just highlighted the availability of the water and sewer. Sewer kind of just being one of those items that's, almost we'll just have to see, again, with those limited connections that the county has. So this did go to Planning Commission on August 13th. And the Planning Commission did recommend approval of this proposed zone change. So, any questions for me? Okay.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go ahead and open up a public hearing. Anybody that wants to comment on this project? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. And Brett, do you have anything further? So I'll entertain a motion.
I have to look at the computer because I forgot my glasses.
Slide back to the wall.
I'll move for approval of zone change ordinance 2026-19 to the Iron County zoning map. Zone change from RA 20, rural agricultural 20, to R1, residential 1 acre, approximately 20 acres, addressed as 3831 West, 4000 North, Cedar City, Utah.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Agenda item number 2 is public hearing regarding possible 2026 mid-year budget adjustments and possible approval of Resolution 2026-5 adopting 2026 budget amendments.
Okay, do you guys have a copy of that on your screen or?
I think so. Is this-
Okay, so nothing too crazy here. We usually do a budget adjustment around mid-year and then in December as well. The first or the second and third line item here is for the engineer department. So their admin staff, Mary Lee, is going to retire at the end of the year. This budget adjustment is to hire new staff to train for the last few months of the year, so that they are ready when she goes at that time. The next line item is for the liquor beer tax grant money that we get from the state. So usually we get it in December and can include that in the budget. This year there was a delay in that. We didn't get it until like March of this year. So we're including that money. Part of it goes to the jail, which is the $32,946, and then there is the larger portion that goes to the sheriff's office. So down towards the bottom, or 3/4 the way down, we had budgeted $87,000 to go towards that already, and so we are just increasing that up to $99,333. Those are both for the jail and the sheriff's office, and they use that money to get resources to combat against DUIs. The next section is for emergency management. George talked a little bit about this during his report. He didn't include any expenses for travel, training, vehicle operations, vehicle fuel when we did his original budget, because it was unknown if there was going to be a new employee added to his department. Those adjustments are for that new employee. Other significant ones. Let's see. There was a $27,000 grant from Dixie Power to the Newcastle Fire Department for radios. So we're adding that $27,000 there so they can buy radios. The big adjustment here is with the sheriff's jail complex. We had a pretty mild winter, so they were able to have a lot of progress during the winter. We had budgeted $50 million this year to spend on the jail construction. We are increasing that by $20 million just because they're having so much progress this year. Overall, the project as a whole is still within budget. It's just we spent a lot less last year than we had budgeted, and so we're increasing what we're spending this year, just to fit it within the calendar year's budget. Let's see. There is another adjustment in the landfill that's in Fund 57. So when we close our financial statements at the end of the year, we have to set aside so much money for when the landfill closes so that every measure that is required can be taken to restore the land. So there is a certain amount we have to set aside each year. We had been setting that aside in 2 different accounts. We're going to adjust that and move it all into one account just to make it more simple on our books and simple for tracking. So that is that $2,242,000 adjustment there. And in Fund 61, we do have an adjustment there. There was the R Plus Energy that did a presentation, I think it was last commission meeting, about Appaloosa 2 project to pay for the administrative expenses for that. With our attorney, they send us a payment, which was $22,000 this year to cover those costs. So we're just adding that $22,000 into our budget. Any questions on any of the line items?
No, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Appreciate it. Agenda item number 3 is public comment period. A 3-minute.
A public hearing on
Oh,
On the budget.
on
the
the
budget.
budget amendment. Yeah, sorry. Thank you. All right, so I'll entertain them, or we'll have a public hearing on that. Anybody wishing to comment on that? We'll open that up. Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion.
I will move to approve the mid-year budget adjustments as discussed and possible approval of resolution 2026-5 adopting the 2026 budget amendments.
second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for being the guardrails, because I'll screw this up every time. So I appreciate your help, your patient help. All right. Item number 3 is public comment period. A 3-minute time limit per speaker for public comment. Participants should not repeat others' comments, only for items that are not on the agenda. And no items related to commission's role as appeal board. And comments should be directed to the commission, no attacks on other people's character. We'll open that up. Anybody wishing to enter into that can approach the mic. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close that and move on to agenda item number 4. Discussion and possible approval of Utah Indigent Defense Grant. Indigent Defense Grant number 27D-18 covering July 1, 2026 through June 30th, 2027. Candace. Thank you.
Thank you. The IDC grant is something that is awarded time period somewhere between May and June, and then we reach out to the counties to let them know that we received the grant and then ask if they're willing to now accept the grant. And so I did bring the grant acceptance agreement, if I could present to you, Commissioner, for signature.
Yeah, I've looked through that. And
Okay, so you'll just need to print and sign on those 2 lines right there.
okay. The 24th. All right.
Okay, and then with that grant acceptance, what that does is help us fund 3 of our positions within the public defense. And so I do have contracts for those to present to you for signature. One is the public defender, Ron Noyes. He currently works in the district court, and his position is IDC grant funded. So with that acceptance, we'll move forward with that with your signature.
Should we approve those really quick?
Yeah, so I'll entertain a motion for approval of the IDC grant 27D-18 covering July 1, 2026 through June 30th, 2027.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there just one spot for me?
Yeah, it's on the back.
Okay.
Okay.
How's our workload? Is it average? Is it up? Is it down?
It's staying the same for now.
Same.
So
Okay.
we have the 4 that work in the district court, and that seems to be working well. I was just talking to Lucas that we're uniquely positioned in that because we have the 4, we don't have to call on conflict counsel as often, which is something that can trigger your balance to become out of budget. For example, if you have to procure a conflict attorney, that can usually cost quite a bit more money than you had budgeted for. Because we have the 4, they can manage that caseload, and then they can handle each other's conflicts. And so it works. And as far as caseload, yeah, it's remaining about the same. One area that I'll just put on your radar that seems to be increasing is just the justice court caseload has seemed to gone up in the last few years. But we can discuss that in November. That particular area is on the rise.
Thank you.
So.
Thank you.
And then if I may proceed, this is my contract, so I do the managerial work for multiple counties for the IDC, but I also carry a caseload in juvenile court for child welfare and delinquency. So if I may, I'll proceed with that.
So is this agenda item number 5?
Yeah, they're all, I think they're all.
So agenda item number 5 is discussion and possible approval of contracts for a position, public defense administrator, public defender, and social worker contract.
Yeah, that one's mine, and then the social worker's next.
Okay. So I will entertain, do you want to do both of them at the same time?
That's fine.
And we'll entertain a motion on agenda item number 5.
So I'll move to approve the contracts for positions, public defense administrator, public defender, and social worker contract.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I just want to thank you, Candace, for you do a great job.
Thank you.
Never have to worry about what's going on in your department. You just handle things. So thank you.
All right, there are those for you.
Okay, great.
Thank you very much.
Is there any other questions for my department, or just to touch on my budget? That's healthy. No surprises there. So
Yeah, I guess your presentation from
Yeah, so we're coming in either at budget, or for contracted positions, that's at budget, so no surprises there. And then we have a few line items for defense resources and travel and training, and those are not over at this point. So in fact, they're under.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
We'll go ahead and move on to number 6, discussion and possible approval of resolution 2026-4, amendment of property into the Iron Springs Inland Port Project area, presented by Spencer Viernes or Danny Stewart.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. Before I even get started in this, I'm going to ask for a bit of a change on the wording of the agenda item. Instead of the discussion and possible approval of a resolution, we're just going to ask for time for a discussion this morning, and not worry about any action from the commission this morning. Going on, as we wrap up the month of August, going on 3 years now that I've been with Utah Inland Port Authority. Time flies. In that time, quite a few things have happened. Originally, we had about just under 1,000 acres with the BZI Innovation Park and the Cedar City Savage Transload Facility. We've amended properties a couple of times that has included other county properties, as well as some in Cedar City, Parowan, and Enoch. And the map that I'm showing here shows the main Iron Springs project area. Savage is that 75 acres just at the very top that's a little bit disconnected. We come down to the BZI Innovation Park and the other areas that are in the county that have been amended in, and then the undeveloped portions of Port 15 and the Amber Industrial Park. This also shows the Enoch Industrial Park, and just off of the map is the Parowan Airport Industrial Park. And in that time, a lot of things have happened. It seems like the long game doesn't always happen as quickly as anticipated, but when you look out there in the last 3 years, there's been an awful lot of change and an awful lot of investment and some good things happening. We've had hundreds actually thousands of rail cars processed here that have taken thousands, well over 4,000 long-haul trucks off the road through those 2 transload facilities, mostly hauling steel and iron, or steel and lumber. Fuel oils, food grade oils, lots of different materials coming through there that were all coming into the region on truck, and a lot of that is transitioned to the rail, so we're very excited about that. We've also been able to recruit a small plastic manufacturer, hopefully getting very close on the announcement of some other manufacturing out in the Iron Springs area, as well as been able to work with Enix City to get that LS Electric expansion here instead of in Texas. That was the other contemplated area. So some fun things happening. The item that we're going to talk about this afternoon is the top left corner there. This is 830-ish acres, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on that. About 830-ish acres. That's quite a bit north and west of the Iron Springs area. This is a project that I know that you're aware of. I'm excited to have Spencer and Kyle with us today to present this publicly and talk about what this project means and how partnership with the county, utilizing the Inland Port Authority's financial tool set, could help this project to move forward, benefiting Iron County, I believe. So again, not asking for any action, but I'd like to welcome Spencer. You're going to present on this morning. Talk a little bit about this project and how working together with the port, the county, and Project Juniper, that this might be a beneficial thing for the community. Spencer.
Thank you, Danny, and good morning, commissioners. So we have had a bit of discussion prior to today around what Project Juniper is and what the potential opportunities are with respect to Project Juniper. Today, we really wanted to talk a little bit about how a project like this interacts with a community like Iron Counties, which includes Cedar City, Taparoan, and all the communities in between and surrounding. One of the big things that I think it's really important to understand around these types of projects, and especially what we like about Project Juniper, is we think there are a number of paths to where communities in today's economic climate can really take advantage of what the industrial landscape requires and is demanding today, rather than what has traditionally sometimes been the case where industrials will take advantage of communities so that they can achieve their ends. And we think Project Juniper is a pathway and potentially using the Inland Port Authority's financial toolkit to be able to have that leverage for the benefit of the community. And so what I'd like to talk about first is what is the actual opportunity from an economic development perspective, and what is really bringing this to a head within communities like Iron County, right? So John, if you want to go to the next slide to the opportunity, where you are. So today, across the industrial sector, power availability and power scarcity is probably the most significant bottleneck to industrials across that landscape being able to select sites. There have traditionally been and historically an industrial or a land developer would go to the power utility and say, hey, or the various utilities and say, hey, I need this much of X, right? I need this much water, or I need this much power, or I need to be this close to rail, and they would just expect those to be provided on a certain time frame. Because of the demand and the lack of those resources available in most communities today, it's really hard for those industrials that would generally be coming into a community like Iron County or Salt Lake City or Abilene, Texas, to find those things without there being other participants, especially folks who would come and develop that on site to be able to make those site selection criteria a reality. And so Project Juniper is advantaged, and Iron County is actually advantaged because you have some places where you have the appropriate infrastructure that allows for the development of all of those site selection criteria in a really time-efficient way. So across industrial facility development in North America, we have some major, let's call it big categories, right? Obviously, data centers have been in the news. They're very big. There's a huge amount of power capacity that's in demand for data centers. But they're not the only thing, and they're not the only industrial vertical that needs power and is having trouble finding sites. $300 billion is what's committed in the U.S. semiconductor industry. As we've seen over the course of this administration and the last administration, there's a big push to try and bring industrials back to the United States that have been offshore before. And there's a lot of money being spent towards that. And again, also a scarcity of some of the resources, power, et cetera, that are necessary so that those facilities can be developed. The same thing is true with respect to the steel and steel fabrication industry. EAF on our slide, and that stands for electric arc furnace. They're also heavy power users, but they're a pathway towards being more efficient with respect to that steel fabrication and the manufacturing component. Today, there's demand for about 109 million tons per annum of that capacity that's available. But the average electric arc furnace is somewhere in between 50 to 150 megawatts per EAF. I'm going to go to the next slide. So we have a supply problem. We have all this demand, but we don't have all the criteria in that many places so that we can satisfy that demand. One of the things that's unique about Project Juniper is there is a collection and of the various criteria required so that you can actually provide for these industrial verticals. That's particularly beneficial for Project Juniper, but also for the community with respect to the opportunities in economic development. We have rail and transport. I was just noticing over the last week, I'm pretty sure that fuel prices across the state have gone up by about 20 cents. Diesel is almost $6 a gallon, which really advantages rail transport rather than over-the-road transport. And the more that we can advantage rail facilities, the more advantages you have across the industrial spectrum to be able to address site selection and bring in advanced manufacturing, heavy industry, and even just logistical and distribution infrastructure. We also have the opportunity to develop power here. Iron County is one of the places where you have a major interstate natural gas pipeline that allows for dispatchable power generation. And again, you can decide how you want that to exist within your community, but it gives you the advantage of being able to take control over what that pathway looks like for your particular community. For purposes of the electric arc furnaces, for advanced manufacturing, for heavy industry, those that need process heat, that need power, for better or worse across our country, natural gas has been a very reliable provider of fuel for those types of developments. Next slide. So among the most significant markets that are under pressure, obviously we all hear about data centers. But the industrials, Arizona, Texas, the Southeast manufacturing belt, they're all hurting because of the lack of power capacity. And that's not just a function of one industry taking much of our power. It's really more of a function of over the course of the last 20 years, we've focused as a power industry much more on energy efficiency than we have on new development. And so we've had a little bit of a gap created as we started to see a spike in demand. Next slide. So we think that a solution to a lot of these demand issues is not just to focus on a single use or a single purpose campus. And there are a couple of reasons for that. You have this convergence of power infrastructure, fuel supply, rail service, and the ability to deploy advanced telecommunications connectivity. And all of those kind of aggregate into the opportunity to look at a more diverse economic development initiative across an industrial park. Do you want to go to the next slide, John? Project Juniper is about 830 acres, and we are the developer, and we bring in other vertical developers. So we don't develop vertically. We will bring in power generation developers, and all of those folks will have to come back here to get your approval. We have marketed to advanced manufacturing in the titanium space, rail and rail serve developments that work with folks like Union Pacific, which the line bisects the majority of that 830 acres. From a transload, from an intermodal facility perspective. And then we also have deep relationships in the digital infrastructure and data center space, and they're also very interested. And so we plan on having a multi-use park that starts off at about 300 megawatts of power based upon the commercial negotiations that we have right now, and having the ability to scale beyond that. As Danny mentioned before, we are what I call far enough out there so that the rest of the community and the general plan has time to act and grow along with this economic development, but close enough that we can be relevant to the community, meaning that we're not 2 hours away for jobs. We're a 20 to 30 minute drive from somebody sitting in Cedar City proper, so that they can get to a place where you've got innovative technology, but significant long-term manufacturing that can be sustainable to the community for decades to come. I mentioned before that in a lot of instances, you'll have an industrial who comes in and they want the county or they want the community to provide significant incentives so that they can come in and it makes it feasible economically for them to come and locate within the community. And that has often been the case across the industrial space, whether you consider data centers, advanced manufacturing, waste processing, whatever the case may be. We think this is a time where you can actually flip that conversation on its head a little bit. Some of the folks, and because my partner Kyle and I have a long history within the data center space, we have a lot of contacts there, and that will probably end up being something of an anchor customer with respect to the larger park. But it can't be the only customer. And as you look at those particular use cases, you have to identify, does it make sense to invite someone in that was going to extract so much value and maybe not give very much at all? We're pretty happy that most of the conversations we've had with folks that are on the data center development side, they don't want to accept any incentives. They don't think that that's a good idea, and they're ready and willing to move down that pathway versus the opposite of, hey, if we come, you guys have to give us a bunch of stuff. More than that, one of the reasons that we think it's really interesting with the UIPA or the UIPA toolkit, being able to leverage the tax increment associated with how we engage those fiscal drivers from an economic development perspective, it allows for the development and deployment of public infrastructure across the county geography without the county's historical tax base having to participate or contribute at all to the development and deployment of that public infrastructure. And so, as we mentioned before, we're a little bit further away from Cedar City or Enoch City or places where you have significant developed roadways, right? Lund Highway isn't paved all the way out to where the project is. Neither is the Antelope Road or the Avon Road. We would consider those things that would be developed as a result or through the tax increment provided by bringing in some of those anchor customers. And so instead of having that raise property taxes, whether that's for the road construction itself or for additional administrative or county staff to address municipal services provided along those pathways, that would all be covered really because the anchor customers are coming in and the tax increment derived from their economic development CapEx would allow for the payment and the CapEx necessary for all of those improvements. We like to call that something that's more akin to how we look at these developments, looking at a community asset model rather than just a business first model. Because there are ways today where as these folks come into your county or come into your community and they would like to deploy because it's advantageous for them from a site selection perspective, from a distance to where their nearest addressable markets are, they are now in a position, or you are now in a position, where you can ask what they're going to do for the county rather than them just asking what the county or the community is going to do for them. So thinking about UIPA as an economic development tool, there are a couple components that really stand out. If you were to undertake a public works project here in the county, let's say through one of your services districts, you might have to bond for that. The responsibility and the economic exposure with respect to that financing falls to the community itself. Through UIPA, you don't have that economic exposure in the same way. The balance sheet and the credit exposure doesn't fall to the county. Instead, it's maintained through tax increment and falls through UIPA and the state's balance sheet, which is a benefit that you can utilize through the UIPA toolkit. Separately, one of the tools that we would anticipate using as part of being in the UIPA project area, were that to make sense, would be developing public infrastructure through a public infrastructure district, meaning that we separate the geography and we develop infrastructure that is ultimately available to the public. So one of the significant components about these types of developments now, because power is one of the most scarce components of site selection in today's industrial landscape, is as we invite power generation development in, we would ultimately build our own transmission ring around the industrial park. That transmission ring, at whatever voltage it may exist, is considered public infrastructure. And so that public infrastructure district acts as an interlocal that other municipalities, including the county itself, could contract with. And that means that becomes available for regional support. My guess is, and I don't know this for a fact, but I think that the circumstances point to this. There are probably some areas that have been identified as available for industrial development that might be seeing challenges in attracting customers because they have a longer pathway to being able to provide power to any potential customer target. The opportunity with having a public infrastructure district that can deploy its own transmission and potentially support power generation or power load requirements of a connected inland port project area may be extremely beneficial with respect to their site selection criteria and being able to match them with potential customer targets that they may already be pursuing. And that in itself increases the tax base and benefits the community by being able to create a greater job opportunity. The other, I think, significant component of a public infrastructure district is the latitude with which we can look at what constitutes public infrastructure. For example, many of these industries, power generation, data center, advanced manufacturing, waste processing, rail and logistics, they need to look at places where they can develop the labor and employment pipelines for their industries, not just locally at that particular site, but across their enterprise. Because oftentimes as they come into a particular location, this is one site among a few that they're looking at across a particular larger geography, say a country or a continent. Because groups like SUU and Southwest Tech sit here in community, and because those industrial participants are looking to grow their labor pool in community as well and have specific training that they can deploy a standard operating procedure across their enterprise portfolio, there's a unique opportunity for the public infrastructure district to be able to partner with those academic institutions as well. Again, not taxing the historical rate base, but rather utilizing the tax increment from anchor economic opportunities and industrial participants to leverage that and be able to grow the workforce in community that can stay here or decide if there's another location that they'd like, they can do that as well. But one of the big drivers in our eyes for doing this type of diverse industrial development in communities that have the criteria like in Iron County and a Cedar City and an Enoch and a Parowan and the surrounding communities is this presents a unique opportunity in our time where you no longer have to think about being in your hometown and then leaving to go to the big city so you can get a job that you want to have for your entire career. You can look at having that in your hometown and being able to develop that and grow with that as you grow professionally. John, you want to head down to slide, I think that's 15. We can talk about the tax increment. Let's go just after the numbers on tax increment. I broke it.
So sorry, I don't know where I'm going.
So it should read public infrastructure at the top. There you go. So thinking a little bit about how that works, right? So roads developed through the public infrastructure district and through that, those would be dedicated to the county where that makes sense, right? For most of what we've seen from an offsite engineering perspective, all those roads are in unincorporated Iron County. Those would be dedicated to the county. From a water supply and treatment perspective, we'll talk a little bit more about this later, but there's a significant county project that maintains the same pathway to our project as they had initially engineered. We would look at cost sharing because it doesn't make sense for us to duplicate those efforts. And if we have the opportunity to use our tax increment to essentially benefit that project, we should do that. Separately, one of the key components around these types of industrial parks is fiber development. You need to have the telecommunications infrastructure to match your anchor customers' demands and needs. And so we would look at deploying, and there's more in the deck around fiber development as well. We would look at deploying a redundant loop that goes all the way around the county, both out to our project and back to where SC Broadband, the local fiber provider, has their home office close to Interstate 15. All of that creates additional connectivity corridor throughout the county that allows for additional economic development and growth within the county. Being able to utilize those pathways, but without having to necessarily have SC Broadband wait until there's a customer or have the county deploy that on their own. All right, so let's talk about power. We'll start around 300 megawatts on campus. We think that provides enough power for anchor customers and industrial overflow. One of the big things that we're seeing across the state of Utah is power scarcity, whether that's industrial, residential, whatever the case may be. We're seeing more outages, mainly in some cases just because more people are turning their air conditionings on. And that's a real issue. If we look at, so there's a report out by the International Energy Agency that came out at the beginning of the summer last year, indicating that across the next 10 years, air conditioning will be among the top drivers of power consumption across the world. As economies develop, we want to be more comfortable, and air conditioning it takes power. So generation architecture, we can go to the next slide, John. We will start with natural gas. For industrial operations that need power to be available for multiple shifts, you need something that we call dispatchable fuel, meaning you can run it 24/7. So we'll start with natural gas. One of the key questions, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, but we're going to come back to water, and so I don't want to discount that because fuel and power and water are all connected with cooling, and so we'll come back to that in a further session. But looking at how we want to deploy, we'll start with natural gas engines. They're quick to deploy and they can move up and down relatively well with industrial operations. But as the project scales, you will have to use something that you want to have running at full tilt 24/7, which is probably going to be your typical natural gas power plant. And there are two in Utah that we'll point to as examples that are probably similar to what we'll do. We do anticipate putting a transmission ring around the park. There may be other power resources like renewable energy and storage that we add into the mix. Those are really going to be demand-based. If the customer is willing to pay for all of it, then there's an opportunity to make that contract. We will not put shovels into the ground until we have customers that are ready to kind of put their money where their mouth is. And so,
Spencer, can I interrupt?
You can.
I've been making notes for questions later, but I wanted to interrupt you on this one.
Feel free to interrupt me whenever. Yeah.
So, power generation. So the Pronghorn Data Center proposes water usage is about 7.38 acre feet. And a lot of that is just sinks and toilets and general use. It's not, I guess they're going to use natural gas, but closed loop generators, right?
Correct.
So they would use very little water.
Sure.
I was initially when Bright Night, which is the company that's proposing a data center out by Newcastle.
Sure.
When they initially proposed, they're buying a farm out there that has 2,500 acre feet of water, and they were going to use about 1,900 of it for power generation because they use water in the generation process. I guess it makes the natural gas burn more efficient and cooler, and there's pros and cons to both.
Sure.
But it uses a lot more water, and now they've kind of shifted away from that to some degree to solar and some other things, so they're not using near the water. But what is that? My question is on your solar generation. A couple questions, and I've asked this of Bright Night, of Pronghorn, and I think I maybe even asked you guys. Is, I mean, at some point, Kern River, as you look at everybody that's trying to tap into their line up and down the system, is it first come first serve? Is there's got to be a limit of how much natural gas is available unless they run a new line from Wyoming or whatever, right? So there's that question, and then what kind of power generation are you looking at? Is it the closed loop type generator system? Is it?
So good questions. The first question around the amount of available gas in Kern River is an important one. The answer to your question is yes, there is a limit, and there is only, as is the case with any, there's only so much. Now, Kern River could do what they call a mainline expansion, which is basically what you say. They could put another line in the same right-of-way all the way down from Wyoming and potentially double their capacity. They would need a request from a customer, and they would need someone to commit to basically a minimum of 15 years to underwrite that capital project, right? And so you'd have to have a very large customer, and you'd have to have them very willing to say, we're going to make sure we pay for this for the next 15 plus years. On the second question, and so I will say, in an add-on to your question, I think where we're going with that is Bright Night has made an application. Pronghorn has made an application. We're coming to you with Project Juniper and saying, hey, we think that we're going to be able to do this project. Our initial deployment is much smaller than those other two, and I think there's a reason for that, and that really goes to our knowledge of that data center industry and how fast people could actually deploy. But then to your second question, yes, we will start with your closed loop engine system. And so there are two main different types of natural gas power generation equipment. One is called a reciprocating engine. Internal combustion engine runs kind of like your car's engine, but on natural gas, right? Same type of cooling system as your cars.
Like
right?
your radiator?
That's essentially, when you think closed loop, just think of your car's radiator system. It works basically the same way. The second kind is really going to be turbine-generated power, meaning you use a turbine, looks a little bit like, but is based upon some similar technologies, what you'd see in an airplane jet engine. And you run gas through it, it spins the turbines, that spins the generator, and then you get power. You can have a second cycle to that, which is why they call it a combined cycle, where you take the waste heat up steam, and run it through a steam turbine, and then you get two different machines creating power. Steam turbines obviously use water. In a dry climate like Utah, in a high desert, sometimes you use water, like Bright Night was suggesting, and you put it into the air mixture so that it cools the gas down as it's been heated up through the pressure of being in an interstate natural gas pipeline in a hot environment, and that makes it run a little bit more efficiently. And so you can do reciprocating engines for so much, but then you start to lose significant efficiencies as you have smaller engines across a larger footprint. At some point, if you're scaling into thousands of megawatts, it makes more sense to do a natural gas turbine, right? So if you go to the next slide, John, we can talk a little bit about what happens when you scale, right? So there are two plants that are Rocky Mountain Power plants in the state of Utah that are both natural gas turbine power plants. One is in Lakeside, which is in Vineyard, Utah, Orem, Utah, and then it's about 1.5 or so, 1 to 1.5 gigawatts of total power, right? That one uses about 1 billion gallons of water a year. And then you've got the Current Creek Power Plant in Mona, Utah, which uses a different type of cooling, right? And it uses somewhere between, 25, 40 million gallons a year. So significantly less. It's a smaller plant, but it uses a lot less. It uses what's called dry cooling, right? And so there are opportunities even within that turbine structure to look at addressing water consumption in a meaningful way. And so while we haven't looked at that scale from a design engineering perspective specifically, because the customer demand hasn't specifically hit that yet, And when people come in and say they're going to build a gigawatt of anything, I think the scale of how big that is sometimes lost because we're seeing that in the news so often. 1,000 megawatts of anything is a lot of stuff. And it really requires sophistication to get to that place. Starting off with 300 megawatts. So 5 years ago, 300 megawatts was a huge, huge data center. It probably would have been one of the biggest ones on Earth. Now, today, 300 megawatts seems to be standard. But to be honest, there are only about 7 companies on Earth that can pay for that. And so you have a really limited customer base. And so when people come in and say, hey, we can do this, maybe. But there's a lot that has to happen to do that, if that makes sense. So water. Let's talk about water. John, you want to go to the next slide? Any other questions, guys? Sorry.
So, hi, Rich Wilson. So the commissioner asked about the Kern River, and I think one of his questions was, how much of Kern River is currently being used or allocated from a percentage point of view? So I've got this ability out of Kern River. Do you have an idea of how much is already committed? And so the real question is, when will the upsizing have to happen, or a second line? So do you?
Yes,
so
and
you
that depends
have-
on a number of factors. Yes.
Right, but I'm saying, I think the commissioner was asking, are you going to trigger upsizing?
No.
And so is, if
But
Kern
again,
River-
that's a different question. So let's say Bright Night and Pronghorn both all get customers. Yes, you're going to trigger a mainline expansion.
Okay.
Because there's not enough transport. And Kern River, by the way, is transportation. They're not actually the molecules. Right. So you'd have to go to Wyoming, the Opal marketplace, and buy the molecules separately. And then you're paying Kern River to transmit or transport those molecules to you.
Yeah, and what are they currently at per capacity?
I mean,
20,
they're
30,
fully
50?
contracted. And so what you're doing is you're negotiating with folks on the line
That aren't
to
using their
address
capacity.
what they're not using and acquire that. It's almost like a commodities marketplace.
All right. Thank you.
So water. At 300 megawatts, we can work with the Water Conservancy District. To your point, we're a lot like Pronghorn, right? If we're just talking about a data center, but we're not. We're talking about an industrial park that invites in rail served development, industrial agriculture, waste processing, advanced manufacturing. So we think we'll probably need to contract and go out and acquire a couple hundred acre feet to make sure that all of those industrials can address what they need for their development needs. We think we're easily within that 300, let's say double that 600 megawatts. If we get to that place, and from an industrial's perspective, we're never going to get to that place.
And that's why you're, and maybe jumping ahead a little bit, that's why you're interested in helping pay for a portion of that pipeline.
That's exactly right.
So because you're going to benefit from that. Which is just so the public, that's a 15,000 for right now,
That's
based
right.
on the groundwater management plan done in Pine Valley. That's 15,000 acre feet of water.
That's right.
So when you look at, say, Pronghorn, for instance, 7.38 or whatever.
That's right.
This is 15,000 acre feet that will be imported in this valley.
That's right. And based on some of the most recent public comments that I think it's Paul Monroe from the Water Conservancy District has made, the estimation is it's about $280 million for that entire project cost. We would pay for somewhere between 50 and 20% of that, because our lines run about 15 to 20% of the way of that pathway by distance. And so it makes sense for us to just go ahead and do cost sharing for that. So on the water side, you can go to the next slide, John. On the water side, we'll acquire the appropriate water rights to contribute to the Conservancy District. We'll look at cost sharing on the Pine Valley water project, and the piping that we do put in, which will be 50-inch pipe based upon our discussions with Paul Monroe, that will be dedicated to the Water Conservancy District, right? And again, one of the big reasons to do it in this manner, or with this framework, instead of trying to go it alone and just pull it up ourselves, is there are going to be diverse needs because we're not a single-use industrial park. We'll have diverse users, and so even the public infrastructure district, acting as an interlocal, will look to have an ongoing relationship with the Water Conservancy District for everything from supply through water treatment. Even if there is a necessity for on-site treatment, there'd be no reason, because we're developers, there's no reason for us to say we want to control all of this. We would rather have the PID work specifically with the appropriate parties to actually manage that.
So sorry for the questions, but so one thing that Danny and David Johnson have been good about in their economic development roles over the years is we have discouraged companies that are water hogs. You know,
Sure.
will you guys do the same thing in your development area?
Absolutely. We understand that, look, Iron County is a water scarce geography. There was an RFP that came through from, I think it was EDC Utah, and the user said they wanted to use 3 million gallons a day. That doesn't work here. Right. And so
That's good.
we're certainly sensitive to that.
Thank you.
I will speak to that even further in a subsequent section, because one of the components, and again, this goes to being able to flip the switch where the county's resources are leveraged for the enterprise versus the county can leverage the enterprise for the benefits that it would like. It's really important that as you look at doing that from a municipal body perspective, that you can maintain some level of enforcement mechanism that allows you to have an eye towards that, right? And when we think about the framework that can be put in place both with the developer, with the Inland Port Authority, with the Public Infrastructure District itself, the county should be able to be specifically engaged and a bilateral party within those particular frameworks. That's really important because it gives you the opportunity to have a hand in what's going to be beneficial for your community over a longer term rather than just in an instant. So as we mentioned before, and we don't have to belabor things on the water story, we can move to the next slide. This side is really just a comparison around how much water it can be used between kind of dry cooling and wet cooling being what you see at Lakeside Station and Vineyard, dry cooling in Mona, and then separately reciprocating engines having that kind of closed radiator system. We can go to the next one, John. Fiber story is really, we can touch briefly on this, but can largely skip over it. As we look at what we'll do for the park, we will deploy fiber conduit all the way to the park and back to the main SC Broadband house. That adds over 20 miles of fiber conduit loop that the entire community can then access. I'm sure SC Broadband will be really happy for every new customer that would like to connect into their conduit.
Could you talk about how that might benefit the area from an industrial standpoint? I mean, that's a lot of infrastructure that's in place, or that would be in place.
It really is. And so, give you an example. Amazon used to ask for 4 megawatts of power for a 1 million square foot warehouse. My understanding is that now they're asking for over 10 times that. And it's not just because they have more lights in that 1 million square feet. It's because they're using more robots and more automated machinery. That automated machinery needs more connectivity, which means you need to have more bandwidth available for the deployment of those more efficient machines. It may seem like as well that means, oh, well, they're not going to employ as many people. They may not employ as many people going to pick things off of shelves, but they will still employ quite a few people because robots break, machines wear down, they need service and maintenance, and they need administrative oversight. And so there will be opportunity, and that's not just industrial, right? That is distribution and warehouse, and all of those things are enabled, to give you a sense of the various operations that are seeing this. Even your grocers are using kind of advanced automated machinery, and they need more connectivity. It doesn't necessarily even mean it has to be connectivity to all of their various places, but they need to have the Wi-Fi, or they need the machines to be able to talk one with another, right? And they need to update those machines on a regular basis, which means they need a big enough hose into the factory or into the warehouse so that they can be updated when they're, sitting on their docks charging or whatever. So as we mentioned before, we can go to the next slide. We want to develop something that focuses on not only what we know as the developer, but is really beneficial for how diverse industrial development can benefit from one of the major demand spikes that we're seeing in our economy today, right? You're going to go to the next slide, John. Data centers are huge CapEx deployment machines, and so they do become something of the fiscal engine and the anchor for an industrial park. But there are 7 to 8 data center companies that can build like this. But there are thousands of industrials that need power. And situating them together allows for communities to see the benefits of the capital deployment that you see with respect to data centers, but the jobs growth and the industrial development that you see with all of these diverse industries, whether that's from an industrial or technology-infused agricultural perspective, additional advanced manufacturing. We've talked to folks that are doing 3D printing in the titanium space. Aircraft and aerospace, right? We know that SUU was recently selected as one of NASA's 7 programs and given grants around aerospace development across the country. There's a new coalition that was just formed this month with 150 different companies in Utah around aerospace and defense contracting and development. All of those types of enterprises, they need places to go. And they're still having trouble finding sites that qualify for what they want to deploy. It doesn't make sense to just do, in our minds, it doesn't make sense to just focus on data centers and try to do that. Does it help to have that CapEx? Absolutely. But is it the end all be all? Absolutely not. Rail served and logistics with fuel prices, it's easier to move things when you have rail. John, will you skip down? There's a slide called Campus Ecosystem. Our thesis around land development is that a single-use campus is beneficial for that single user, but not necessarily in the grand scheme of things. And we think the framework of having a diverse campus that allows for the deployment of both public infrastructure that serves the community, but has a diverse base, especially where power scarcity is such a significant component around our country. It allows for us to leverage the need for that power and what would otherwise be public infrastructure assets to bring in commercial players that benefit all parties, whether it's from a jobs perspective, a career opportunity perspective, an educational perspective, or even a tax-based increment perspective. So on the community partnerships and the engagement side, and Commissioner Cousins, we talked a little bit about this as well. We go to the next one, John. There's an important path to where the community itself and the municipality needs to be able to have its own leverage, its own opportunity to be able to look at the development and say, we like what you're talking about from an economic perspective, but we do need to make sure that there's appropriate oversight so that we're not just giving away the farm, so to speak. And maybe that pun is intended, I apologize. There are a couple of ways you can do this, right? We understand that planning department is working on a new ordinance associated with these types of industrial developments so that you can have a development agreement framework. My understanding is that might be called the strategic development zone. And in every strategic development zone, there needs to be a development agreement with the county on the one hand and the developer on the other hand. And there will be a table of permitted uses specific to that particular acreage. And then anything that falls out of what you identify in the development agreement as specifically accounted for really falls probably under what you would typically have as a conditional use. This gives the county direct oversight and a direct pathway towards addressing its needs and addressing developers' compliance with respect to doing what it said it was going to do. Separately, working with the UIPA framework, right, there's always going to be an interlocal tax sharing agreement that addresses how those taxes are shared between UIPA and the developer or the PID. But we think it's appropriate that the county be included as a contract counterparty to that tax sharing agreement, because those are specific agreements between those three parties, and that gives the county direct standing to leverage what they are hoping to achieve from a community goals basis through that agreement, through the development agreement, and those indirectly, therefore, address any vertical developer that would come in or customer target that would come in. They will be subject to the provisions of those agreements as well. It's really important that you guys have a direct tie to how these things take place in your community, because it is your community. And even for us from the developer's perspective, if we come in here, we anticipate being here for the next 20 plus years. And so those direct ties with the county are important as well for us from a developer perspective, because you guys are going to be the ones that we have to come talk to on a regular basis whenever there's a new customer that comes in. There may even be an additional agreement. So a public infrastructure district established within one of these project areas acts as its own interlocal. That public infrastructure district may require on its acreage municipal services, police, fire, from the county. It would be important for that public infrastructure district, not having its own administrative or public safety staff, to look at what its relationship is with the local municipality, such that those services can be provided. And obviously, they cost money. And so those have to be addressed from a budgetary perspective as well. So across those, we think there are tools that allow for the local municipality or the county and the community that is affected by these developments to have specific ties and direct ties to the development itself through the developer and through other interlocals or other economic development agencies that would have a hand or be providing their own financial tool sets so that this development could come to pass. One of the other components of that is, and we talked about the educational resources, we talked about what skills development could be available, but we also talked about the Pine Valley Project and how those things are impacted. Any questions? That's really it. We really wanted to talk a little bit about what the development could look like, but open for discussion around how participation in a county like Iron County takes place. Of course, commissioners, any of those agreements that I've mentioned, you'll want to have an understanding and feel comfortable that the terms that you think are going to be deployed within those agreements are appropriate, and that you have an appropriate amount of time to think through and establish what you think those are, even if it's just at a basis level. To the extent that we come back and ask for a resolution, we'll be asking for a resolution that really has conditions. And if we put individual base terms in there, something like a term sheet from a commercial transaction perspective, that's just the basis. The actual negotiation of those agreements has to come after for any resolution or any project area to really be effective.
So just a question, and I've got a few here. Obviously, power comes first. It seems like you've got to have power to operate everybody else that wants to come into your data or your industrial park, right?
Sure.
And so do you have agreements with somebody now, or are you out there shopping for someone, or you?
We have two term sheets that are in place. As you might imagine, term sheets are the start, and we continue to negotiate those agreements. Our job as the developer is to bring in the end customer target, and we have ongoing negotiations with those customer targets where we have put them at the same table with the power developers. Because really, the power developer, in much the same way that we think about the tax sharing agreement being a three-party agreement, that power purchase agreement is going to also be a three-party agreement. So the power developer on one side, the PID as the owner of transmission in the middle, and then the end user on the other side. And so we put the power developer and the end user together, and they're negotiating terms actively.
The actual agenda, and I called you with concerns about the wording of the, and maybe that's why Danny decided not to vote on it today. And we've had lots of discussions with the Inland Port, you guys, and I think some of I'll just speak for myself. My concern has been that the Inland Port, while I've been supportive of it, is I don't know if gobbling's the word, but incorporating more and more land in Iron County to be in the Inland Port, and the structure with BZI, I believe, was 70 or 75%, 25 for 25 years, and their administrative fee was like 5%. So we've had meetings with. My concern is the more projects that we agree to go into the Inland Port, we're talking big money. And while the Inland Port promises that they will never use that money in any other jurisdiction other than Iron County,
Sure.
You're generating a lot of money. And I've talked and I brought up the fact that we need to pay for our belt route, which is a huge expense.
Sure.
We need to pay for the finishing of Iron Springs Road. We need to pay for the roads that you're talking about, Antelope, Iron Springs out to your and Lund Highway out to your
Sure.
facility.
Sure.
Desert Mound. That road needs. There's a lot of the pipeline from the West Desert, the jail, whatever it is. We've expressed in our meetings that we are very interested, and I know that you've mentioned that it gives you at least an 18-month to 2-year head start having the Inland Port already established, the infrastructure. But my concern is that, and as we've talked to Danny and Ben Hart and the others in the Inland Port, is that our job as commissioners is to look out for the taxpayer of Iron County.
Of course.
And so we've expressed our desires to use the Inland Port as a tool.
Sure.
So that maybe we say, we're okay with moving you into the Inland Port, but we have total discretion as to when, and so the county gets 100% of the tax incentive to pay for the infrastructure that we need to pay for.
Mm-hmm.
But when we're done. And then we say, thanks for your help, but we're going to then distribute that tax allocation in the normal fashion to the different entities in Iron County.
So I'm not legal counsel for the Inland Port. I have, however, spoken with attorneys in my career, including some that represent the Inland Port. My understanding, again, I would suggest that the county probably has to take this up with their own counsel to make sure that they feel comfortable with this. My understanding is that having the county be a party to any tax sharing agreement, to the extent that you would allow for project area expansion for the Iron Springs Inland Port project area, would allow you to directly negotiate on all of those points, from administration fee through the amounts that would be allocated for public infrastructure, and or any incentives. A key component, again, I can't guarantee this is the case because commitment documents haven't been completely signed yet. But to the extent you have any one or more vertical developers that decide that they're unwilling or they would reject any incentives, you now have another bucket that you would be able to look at allocation and distribution through the county, whether through I would assume through traditional taxing entities or however you decide to allocate that.
So that brings me to my next point is, and you've encouraged us in the meetings we've had to hire outside counsel to whether
I absolutely
with
do.
all of it, whether it's with you or a data center with Pronghorn or Bright Night, whoever, to seek outside counsel to help us with and an MOU with the Inland Port moving forward. And Sam, I don't know if it'd be appropriate today if it's okay, but I'd like to make a motion that we authorize Chad and Sam as our county attorneys to start looking for outside counsel. And you guys have offered to pay pay for part of that, up to 200,000 as a cap, right? If that's what I read correctly on the sheet.
We have talked about that, yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we authorize them to go out and find good outside counsel to help us with things moving forward.
I think it would be a wise decision to look for and to look at how you engage outside counsel.
So that's my motion, Mr. Chair. If it's okay to,
And that's not even something you would have to take a formal vote on. That would just be the direction that you as the commission direct our office to take, and that's something we're willing to do. So,
Have you started to look into that, or you?
yes, that's already something that I've got some leads on. I've spoken to a couple of outside folks, but nothing firm just yet. So if you give me a deadline, we'll have something too. If you want it by next commission meeting or whatever, we can do that.
Okay.
We'll keep the commission.
So we don't need to vote on that. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Are we all okay with
Yeah,
that?
I'm in favor of that. But my comment would be rather than have it time-based, quality-based.
Sure.
Sure.
Commissioners, if I may.
Yeah.
So we already, on some of our RDA and incentives, we utilize Adam Long's office for some of that outside counsel. We could initiate conversations with him and find out if this is within the scope and capacity of what his office can offer us with some of the outside counsel we already receive, or maybe if he might have recommendations that might assist Sam in looking for someone else as well. If you'd like, I can work with Sam.
I'll leave that to Sam and Chad.
The other question that I had in addition to that was we talked about your facility maybe becoming an intermodal type facility where they could do inspections and the containers that are exported to the coast just go on the ship and they don't get stuck at the Long Beach port.
Yeah.
Is that the port that we're talking about? Is that something that
I think there are opportunities with it. That would be specific to, say, Union Pacific's particular routes, and it might be more specific to what the port has authority for. One thing that I'd probably mention too, I think the notion of outside counsel is very important. If there's a question around the developer kind of pushing that ahead as a condition to a resolution, I would assume that there would need to be a resolution passed so that is a commitment. Is that right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and it seems like that intermodal element, that carrot per se, could be a real driver to drawing in clients, right? Or
I think
tenants.
that's right. I think
Is
that's
that
right.
would that
in
be
some ways
correct?
it's a chicken and egg, right? Because the deployment of an intermodal, right? You're looking at a tier 1 carrier who wants to make sure that the volume is available to support their capital investment, right? And then having some of these vertical developers come in that necessarily require significant volume of goods coming back and forth that would really support an intermodal can also be part of what actually attracts them here. Speaking to inland port versus it being seen as a port where you have the opportunity to move through without having to flow through import-export at that particular, say, Long Beach location, that would be something that I would probably have to ask an advisor, or maybe Danny would know more about, to be able to confirm or deny that.
Yeah, I can comment on that briefly. And Union Pacific and any Class 1 railroad's very interesting. They already have their business case and what they're doing. And if you ask Union Pacific today, are you going to build an intermodal for processing true inland port operations in Iron County, they would say, no, not today. But they would also say if the volume demanded that, then we would change our plan today. So as Spencer said, it's a chicken and an egg thing. The railroad has to see the volume to make a business case for that. But
somebody's got to stick their neck out.
Exactly. If we can find the right things, we have this group. We have the Savage Transload facility was recently purchased by Can Do, which does a lot of intermodal and things like that. So those things are available. We just need to find the way to demonstrate that amount of volume to justify that. So that's something that we've been working on since day one. At the Inland Port Authority is not waiting for the railroad to make that decision, but helping them to see the potential for that happening. So we've been having those discussions with the seaports and with different clientele, and that's ongoing, and we'd love to be able to work with Spencer in this project to realize that here. We think it makes a lot of sense.
Wouldn't that be a huge draw for tenants to know they could do that?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, we get questions about that all the time. The other thing is we get the understanding that the Inland Port Authority has the ability to set up these free trade zones and everything else, and that's another thing that's outside of our grasp, but that's a federal government designation. But they're all things we're working towards. It's a big puzzle that we're all trying to solve together. Going back to agreements, though, and we've had these. We are extremely willing as a port authority to be flexible with the tools that we've been granted, and we've had those discussions. If this property is amended into our port area plan and budget, then we'll work with this group to make sure it develops the way that the county wants to see that, and we'll make sure that any agreements that we have are 100% partnership with Iron County and in benefit of the community here. So I just wanted to reiterate that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Okay. Commissioners, thank you for the time. One last comment I would suggest as we kind of think about this in the context of UWIPA, it's often the case that we look at whether, or we speak in terms of a municipality inviting in the inland port. And I think that's appropriate. But I also think that municipalities should think about what they want if they are willing to invite in the inland port. And I think as you think about terms or you think about engaging outside counsel, you're in a place where you can identify what you would like and put that to another authority and see if they're willing to do it. Because that's your prerogative as a municipality with your own ability to dictate terms. Yeah. Thank you.
Hey, one more question. There's a lot of public sentiment about data centers broadly, and I wonder if you guys have a website or some FAQ that you might, or maybe in a link that you might be able to share with us.
We do have a website at e3platforms.com. I would suggest the presentation that we've made available today, we will make available publicly. Obviously, you can share it. But we will make that available. We're actually having that website built right now. Okay. And so, John, what I would probably do is I'll make sure that I circulate an email with that website and with a comment form on it. That way you all, as I'm sure inundated you will be with messages, can point people to that.
Well, we just hired Brett, he's pretty new. And we've almost worn him out already with trying to do PR for data centers, and we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to make that be the applicant, right, Brett? Not Brett.
He used to have a full head of hair.
He had hair when he started.
Thank you, guys.
I appreciate it. We've spent hours and hours as staff with E3 is Spencer and Kyle and Danny in the port, and they've been really forthcoming, and we've had a great amount of communication. So I appreciate that information being presented to the public.
Right. Yeah. Thank you very much, Spencer. You know, I've expressed my concerns to you in the past multiple times. You know, we've got to protect our constituents. Any gas that's, you know, a big concern is that our gas rates don't go up because there's a huge consumer out in the desert, and our electricity rates don't go up, even though that they're going to be a power producer. You know, and I've expressed this before. Any power that's produced in Iron County needs first access to. If it's going to go on the open market, Iron County needs to have first right of refusal to purchase that power via Rocky Mountain Power,
And the sooner we can get nuclear, the better.
So both of those are opportunities. We speak a lot with the folks over at Oklo. Gas is unlikely to go up as you have a large user, mainly because Kern River has a stated tariff on what their transport rate is. The supply side is really just going to be coming out of Opal, which is not going to see any demand or supply pinch anytime soon. So you shouldn't see that happen, at least in the next decade. Stranger things might happen with respect to vehicle gas, and that is beyond our reach with respect to controlling geopolitics. Separately, the ability to access power that might be more than what is used on site will be a part and a from the beginning part of the public infrastructure district. The concept of a public infrastructure district, and Danny can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm fairly certain this is pretty accurate. It is considered public infrastructure, which means that as it's deployed even on private property, that public infrastructure district, the interlocal, will act as a municipality. So if it's Cedar City, if it's Parowan, if it's if it's Enoch City, that is looking at, and Parowan's a good example because they already have a municipal utility, and they're saying, hey, we would like to have access to that because we have some players in and they need 30 megawatts. Great. That's a direct negotiation between municipalities that exists and is a natural thing to do today.
Right.
And frankly, it is more efficient to run that over a shorter period or a shorter distance of line than to send it through the Rocky Mountain Power System and then try to acquire it back, which you can do through some of the existing organizations like UAMPS, but you can also do the direct bilateral.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Agenda item number 7, review per UCA 10-2-804 and possible approval of annexation into Cedar City, creating an island of annexed land. Van Trust proposed annexation presented by Platt and Platt. Rob Dotson representing who? Platt and Platt or Van Trust?
Both. Thank you, Commissioners, for the opportunity to come back again 2 weeks later after we had our initial discussion regarding this request for annexation. We've had a few discussions since that time, and we appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. The annexation request is still in play. This property itself would bring about 1.6 million square feet of light industrial space to the community and provide for multiple jobs, as you well know. Our previous conversation we had, there were some concerns expressed about specifically about annexing an island into Cedar City. I'm just back to hear if you've had any other additional conversations or anything you'd like to discuss about that and answer any further questions.
So I didn't talk to Tyler. He called me Saturday and missed his call, and so I called him this morning at 7.
Okay.
And talked to him for about a half an hour. But and a nice guy, and I think he wants to do whatever. I really do generally feel that he wants to do what's right, whether it be by the county or city or whatever.
Correct.
I do believe that. I am concerned about creating the island and creating a precedent because I don't ever remember as a county doing that, and I know the legislature discouraged that heavily. So that's an issue, and I know that he mentioned that they're trying to get a couple between so it's contiguous, but yet I've heard also that you say that to Inland Port or Port 15 and then they have to bring their standards up to Cedar City. They have to put curb and gutter and sidewalks and so really it's not, from what I'm understanding, it's not totally advantageous for these other entities to annex into Cedar City because their taxes are going to be higher, and so that's a concern. The other concern is, when I talked to Tyler, he said an 8-inch sewer line would be adequate for their project, but that's really not smart to run 8-inch sewer line just for them. They really ought to run a 30-inch,
correct,
and to supply everybody. But who pays for that? And I know that's what impact fees are for, is to pay the upsize between the 8 and the 30. I know that's what those have historically been used for, but we're talking city, county, we don't have, I don't think we have the impact fees in our budget to pay for the difference. And so, right now I'm hesitant to support the creating the island, but yet I know where they're at.
Sure.
On the sewer, because they need to run, they really ought to run. And I know if somebody else doesn't connect, I think it's a 10-year deal. If somebody doesn't connect to that sewer line and help pay for the cost of that upsizing, then it's all on them. And so that's a big risk, right? So I don't know if you could address that, Rob.
Well, previously we did talk about the inland port, and you mentioned the same comments you had at the last agenda item, same comments about the inland port. They have provided us a letter that they would help fund, if not fund the total upsize of that line with the tax increment financing. And you expressed the concern last time, as you did, about inland port. What that does is that really takes the pressure off any impact fees from either entity, whoever applies for the inland port money, whether it's in Cedar City and Cedar City applies, et cetera. And so that takes the pressure off impact fees completely, because it would be paid by that tax increment that would go towards the county and the city to do an upsize anyway. So it's just shifting the burden. Actually, it doesn't even shift.
So
the
you're
burden.
saying we could use that same template that we're talking about with E3 and the MOU with the inland port to use them to get that done, and then
Size our sewer.
Yeah.
size their sewer line to be done.
Yeah.
So that's,
and that would, of course,
interesting.
benefit everybody in the community, especially in that area, because you're no longer putting in any septics in. It gets it closer to other industrial areas that could use that sewer.
Well, I know they're just north of Frank Nichols development, and then the other development, I can't remember the name, just to the south of Frank's, but what's his name? Can't think of it. So I know there's interest there for that sewer.
Yeah.
And so.
And in talking with Dr. David Blodgett from the health department,
Mm-hmm.
he's adamant that this is critical to get sewer away from, or get sewer into that area, so we can protect the aquifer. Of course, you understand.
Has Tyler worked with the county though? Brett, has he contacted you?
Oh yeah, we've been.
Have you guys been in? Because why? Because I know that, like, when you develop properties in unincorporated county, and we don't require curb and gutter, sometimes curb and gutter is a detriment when it comes to flooding. It can funnel all that water to places you don't want. Borrow ditches are the best because it just soaks in the ground and recharges our aquifer, and you don't have it flooding somebody going all in one place. So sometimes not annexing is better than, because of some of those kind of reasons, right?
Yeah, and we've had those discussions with both county and Cedar City. In fact, we're meeting with Cedar City, depending on your decision today. We're meeting with Cedar City tomorrow, where they've been amenable to reducing the infrastructure demands specifically for those issues: curb, gutter, sidewalk, drainage, streetlights in an industrial area. Those types of things, they're willing to have those discussions and reduce that demand to create a better atmosphere for that development and for future developments in the city of those types.
Yeah, so just real quick. So I've stayed in touch with Tyler, over the course of all this, just to kind of receive periodic updates of what they're doing. I would say, though, that they've probably had more conversations, more discussions with Cedar City to kind of look at what that would look like if they were to annex. We haven't really talked at all about what development, if it were to remain in the county, would be. I do think that they're obviously pursuing the annexation and what that would look like if they were to. And so to do that, yeah, they've been, talking about different things like Rob had just mentioned, as far as what infrastructure would look like, what, different improvements would look like. I think so that they can just make a decision one way or the other to see what works best for them. So, or what works best for the community in general. And I do think overall, again, I would really hope that they would look at those other connecting properties, because again, there's just a lot of things that disconnect, some issues that it creates. And so I do think that if they could make that happen and have that be contiguous, I think that's probably the
We had
best thing
we
to
had a good
happen.
meeting with the health department, and honestly, a lot of those buildings out there, they have a toilet and a sink in the kitchen and break room. That's it. It's not like they're producing a lot of industrial waste that they're putting down there. And we had Pete Surrey there, the city specialist, and we had a really long, good discussion about it. And it's my biggest concern was the sewer, and if we can utilize UIP as a tool for that problem, it seems like it doesn't need to go in the city.
So have you two had conversations about this project?
A little bit. We visited with Tyler early on and with the county, and what we talked about was the ability to utilize the AIB loan program through the port. It's a low interest loan that could be borrowed very specifically for a project like this, and then we could commit tax increment to service that debt for that loan. So that's something we're looking at. Doesn't matter who the loan applicant is. It could be the city, the county, the company. It's a tool that's available. So we're happy to continue those discussions.
One of the things to your point about the properties in between, I have been in contact, the county, of course, last time we talked, Cedar City and Brett sent a letter to those property owners requesting if they wanted to add in, be part of the annexation. Never received a response. I did recall the owner of one of them, and they're not interested whatsoever. To your point, it's a lot easier to develop in the county than it is in the city. To Van Trust's point, they want to do what's best for everybody, but it seems like at this point it's better to annex into the city to work with them on this sewer issue because it's their sewer system. And it takes the pressure off the county. In another way it takes the pressure off is because the county only has a certain allotment of sewer connections. Now that's hopefully modifying with Rich Wilson's work to be a percentage of flow instead of percentage or number of connections. But at this point, number of connections, if this is in Cedar City, then you retain those number of connections in the county. It doesn't go against you. So there's that issue with the sewer also. If one thing I've been authorized to mention, if contiguity to the city is an issue, we could also annex Iron Springs Road between the properties. Then you don't have a legal wondering if it's close or if it's not contiguous. That's another option.
What about maintenance of Iron Springs Road?
I'm sorry?
Will they take over maintenance of Iron Springs Road, that portion?
That's a good
City?
question. And that's something we'd have to work out with both. And here comes Rich Wilson.
So we're talking from.
Rich, come up to the mic so we can hear you.
So we're talking that area between the city's limit and this this proposed island. From right there to there. So the next question is, we have a contribution required for the improvements that are happening right now. So there's a percentage. So we're committed to $500,000 cost share with the project. I don't know what percentage that is, but is
When you say project, you mean the improvements on Iron Spring Road?
The current, yes, the current improvement of Iron Springs Road happening right now. And so is the city going to reimburse us for that section of road that we're going to pay for if they're going to annex it? They haven't done that before. So I just so the public knows what I just gave the commissions and Jonathan and Sam. And I've got some edits to it that I'll make. But I was contacted this morning, and I spoke to Mike last week. Ken and Paul both called me. So I wasn't, so I think I should speak to this issue. So I'll just read what I wrote. The creation of an island within the county sets a concerning precedent and creates significant unresolved legal, financial, and infrastructure and jurisdictional issues between the city and the county. At present, there are no agreements in place between the county and the city addressing the following critical issues related to the annexation of property. property islands. Road maintenance. No agreement establishes which government will be responsible for maintenance of the roads serving the city island. Without clear responsibility, residents could face deteriorating roads, delayed repairs, disputes over funding, and service obligations. Now, not all of these are as hard and as difficult as they might sound on paper, but tax sharing. No agreement governs the allocation of shared tax revenues generated by properties within the island. This creates uncertainty regarding which jurisdiction will receive revenue and which jurisdiction will bear the cost of providing services. And I think it would be wise to ask Luke, what does the county lose in tax revenue by doing this? Sewer upsiding costs. No agreement currently determines how the city and county will share the substantial costs of sewer upsizing for the development or other infrastructure improvements required to support the annexation. The absence of a cost-sharing agreement would unfairly shift financial burdens to the taxpayers. This has been an issue with BZI, just trying to get that cost-sharing agreement. Trading and consolidation of islands. No agreement permits the city and the county to trade or consolidate islands to eliminate county islands within the city or establish more logical, contiguous boundaries, creating additional islands without addressing existing boundary problems would further complicate governance and service delivery. Unforeseen concerns. The creation of a city island could result in other unanticipated legal, financial, administrative, and service-related problems. These may include confusion regarding emergency response. That's not so complicated, or law enforcement jurisdiction. Differences in zoning. That's big. And land use regulations, another big one. Inconsistent permitting and code enforcement. Responsibility for drainage and stormwater. That's huge. So far, we don't have an agreement with the city about stormwater. It all flows into the county, but we don't have a consistent or a body that determines how that's going to be paid for, so that what comes to us we can handle, and that creates problems. Stormwater is huge. Coordination of fire and public safety. I don't know why some of these things I had modified this and then they went back in. Disputes over utility service connections. But there's just these issues that are unforeseen that we haven't resolved yet. I write, the developer should not be allowed to create city islands until these issues have been resolved through binding formal agreements between the city and county. Moving forward with such agreements would be fiscally irresponsible, invite future disputes, and impose potentially significant costs on taxpayers. It would also establish a troubling precedent for future annexations and make already fragmented boundaries even more difficult to correct. I think the city and the developer should fully disclose to the county what negotiations and concessions are related to this. They've obviously been having conversations that we haven't been included in. We can negotiate just as easily with the inland port as the city can and provide the same infrastructure of finance that the city can. The issue still remains that sewer, which I believe absolutely is important. We need to sewer those projects. But until these things are delayed, what we have now is build out in that area that is hopscotch.
So if we facilitate the upsizing from 8-inch to 30 as a county, do we get more than the 200 further connections?
We have not been assured that we will be able to use we have not been assured that we will be able to use the capacity provided. We have been told there's a bottleneck with the connections. So the connections and the capacity are two different things. And Rob mentioned that, and I appreciate that. And we have been trying to work on that. But even in our last meeting, we were not assured that our proportional share of purchase or contribution will allow us to use the 37.5%.
So if the city's willing to, and this is the first I've heard of that, if the city's willing to give on some of the requirements on streetlights and curb and gutter, and
that's the first I've heard as well.
That's the first I've heard of that. But if they're willing to do that now, they can always do it later. I mean, if those landowners in between, to make it contiguous, decide later to do that, they can annex then. If that can always be done, right?
Yes. And we have commissioned a capital facilities plan, which, when's the timeline on that, Brett? When are they going to be done?
Before the end of the year.
And we commissioned that to be done so that we could resolve some of these issues and see what was going on. And we don't have that report yet. I think right now, to jump forward and do this without even having our own facility plan finalized is a little getting the cart before the horse. I want to work, and my goal is to work collaboratively. But I think that we have as many tools to offer Van Trust as the city does. But they've been courting the city, and I don't know why. We wouldn't require any less sewer line than the city does because it's the sewer master plan. Even though they could do it with 8, we would still have that. And the upsizing costs. And I think the Inland Port has spoken to the benefit of how we can fund those things. But again...
Well, the 30 only makes sense. I mean, it's like the E3 saying that they're going to put fiber.
Yeah.
It's the same principle.
Yeah, from an engineering point of view, it absolutely makes sense. But when we're building it, and then we're basically saying we're creating a situation that isn't particularly friendly when we say you can only connect when you're in the city. And I understand that, and I have more information that I didn't have prior about why that happened 25 years ago. But and I won't speak to that right now, but Rob's my friend. I really feel like I don't want to be. Anyway. No, it's not about us at all.
Well, your company doesn't have a horse in this race, whether it's city or county, does it?
My what?
Your Platt and Platt does not have a horse in this race, whether it's city or county, right? You're just representing your client.
We get paid by the landowner.
You what?
We get paid by the landowner.
Correct. That's right. So
their request is to work with the best way we can.
When I talked to Tyler this morning, I asked him point blank, and he says, I don't care. He says, I'm good either way. We just want to do what's right. He said, we cannot operate with our clients coming in, whether it's Walmart or these big companies, to our industrial center. We can't operate on septic, period. They won't come. And that makes sense. Yeah. So he did not, I pinned him down on that, and he said, I don't care either way. I just want to do what's right. That's what he said.
And the intent is to do what is right, but that also depends on who you talk to. I want to clarify a few things that Rich said, which I would like a copy of that. How come you didn't send me one, man? We're friends. Probably just wrote it.
I wrote it this morning.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I thought.
These have been my thoughts for the whole period.
It entered his mind at 3 a.m. this morning, and he put it on paper at 7.
And Rich and I have actually had these conversations various times.
You'll get a copy.
Yeah, okay.
It'll be public record, and I will add my comments to that.
Yeah. Rich and I have had discussions about these issues a couple of times, and it isn't, we're not blind to those kind of challenges. The question I have is, if we had 2 contiguous properties, we had properties between us that were annexed, would we be having this discussion? And I'm saying, would we be having a discussion about the overall problems that are happening?
Right.
Not necessarily the annexation itself.
Maybe not, but the state says don't create islands.
So the annexation itself isn't the question. It's all these other issues that's brought up, right?
Well, it is, but
it is, but this is
the
triggered.
underlying issue is the sewer line and getting all of that area on the sewer, and
yep.
And
let's do it.
It's a great opportunity for the Inland Port to.
Let's do it. So whatever decision you make, as Tyler has said, we're going to work through these issues, whatever they are. I appreciate the fact that, and I probably shouldn't say this in a public meeting, but the county is very receptive to our requests for information and comments. So we have had multiple meetings, not really formal at times, but your staff are very, very responsive, and that is very appreciated.
So back to the sewer for just a moment, it is a bigger issue, and this is what worries me by not having it there, that we're going to be hopscotching over the area
Right.
with on-site sewer, and now nobody wants to connect because they already have an on-site septic system, and they don't. And that's why our capital facilities plan, we're behind the 8 ball, and we need it sooner than later, and we should be discussing that, as well as stormwater control. I mean, they're going to be an island of stormwater. Where's it going? Surprise! When you're an island, it's going to the county, and we have no agreement. Yes,
It's always gone.
where it's always gone. I'm not saying it's a new area, but at least it's been the county's problem.
Yeah.
And now it's going to be, the city gets to and I love to have these discussions. I mean, I talk to Lisa all the time, and we struggle with how to deal with a flat area with stormwater.
Does the city have the same detention pond requirements as the county?
Yeah, we do, and the truth is, they're undersized for a flash storm.
Both the city and county? Because I know we just doubled ours, right?
We have not doubled
I
it
thought we
because
did.
you haven't approved it, because I have to bring that for approval.
Okay. Well, I think it's good.
Yeah, it's the same as theirs, and they've always done it that way, and so I just think it's a little. We have no policy, no practice, no agreement in place with the city for the areas I've just outlined, that say, how does this look? And I know we spoke with the mayor a week ago, and we'd like to do that. We talked to the mayor, Paul Bittman, and we'd like to do it. The trouble is, it's the details that matter. It's when you get to the end of it. Doing this as a broad topic that says we'll get to it doesn't leave us in a position of equality in negotiation.
And I've had I've paid a lot of attention to this over the last couple of weeks. I've met with Rich, I've met with Terry, I've met with Brett. We've discussed this, over and over again, and there hasn't been any direct negotiation or trying to work out the fine details with the city at this point. And I would hate to approve something with the idea of, hey, let's just approve it and then we'll work out the details later.
Read the bill later, right?
I just think that's dangerous. Like, yeah, here, let me sign on the dotted line and then look at the interest rate, next week. I just think it would be really bad practice to approve the annexation now without working out those details. Especially, we know that the port has funding available for sewer lines, and I think the biggest thing, we keep talking connections versus percentage, and I think that needs to be worked out before, I feel like we're being held hostage a little bit about, well, if you don't do this, we're not going to give you any more sewer connections.
We don't know where we're at.
Still in flux.
Is there a way that we could multi-path in case it goes either way to help your client? Your client, does that make sense? Like,
Right
if
now-
the answer is ultimately the commission says, no, we're not willing to annex, is there something maybe that, I don't know.
Well, if you say no to annexation, I'm sure the client will say, let's go get a building permit.
Yeah, that's
Right.
that's
Because-
the feeling I had with Tyler this morning.
Because-
Right.
He said, "I'm willing to work with either one. I just want to do what's right." So
Yeah,
I
he's
think
been
I don't
open
think it's a
about
big deal
that.
to him.
So we could technically, because of the way that the law is set up, we could ask for a building permit and negotiate infrastructure as we go along. To Michael's, to Commissioner Blake's point,
You can call me Michael. It's cool.
okay. We could negotiate, and we will. It doesn't matter who the owner of the utility is. We have to go through their processes to get the utility, whether it's annexed or not. And if it's not annexed, we'll work with Rich and work with Brett and work with those who have authorized the utilities. And we'll work with Cedar City to put a 30-inch sewer line and work with Inland Port potentially to make that happen. Either way, the best thing to do is get everybody annexed to the city for municipal services. The county is not a city. Sometimes you have to act like it, right? But let's get this, and that's why we have the Tier 2 annexation area. Is first thing we do, according to the county policy, request annexation in a Tier 2 area. At least that's what Reed Erickson taught me for years and years. That's the policy. We're following policy, and if the best thing is to annex, you guys will say yea or nay. If it's the best thing not to annex at this time, then that's what we'll do. So there's our response. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Rob. Hey, Rich, I have one more question. On that parcel, the belt route, did we move it to the west of that, or is it still on the east? Is it
You
still
want to
on
pull up the belt route, John, and you'll see
I
that
don't
it's-
need to really go into too much depth. I was just curious.
It's the east
East-
red lined.
Right. Okay.
That's
okay.
the belt route.
And right. Okay.
And on the
That's all I needed.
the plan.
So we're okay on the belt route.
Yeah.
No matter what happens.
And I think on the plan for the property is a dedicated, half of a dedicated belt route.
So there's a
Right there.
50-foot dedication.
He's, okay.
So they're working with us on that.
And they did that before. And I want to remind the commissioners that they came to us months ago and asked us to rezone that. And we did that. And so we have been working with this client.
In Cedar City, 2 weeks ago, they had a zone change also. So they actually plan out the zoning of the annexation area, and they did a zone change on this property itself to make it industrial instead of residential. Portion of it was residential, and they went through the process for their future planning to establish the zoning now. So they've already been working on that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Do you want me to make a motion?
Sure.
Hold on, my computer went dark, so I have to get it armed. For UCA, approval of UCA 10-2-804, I'm going to move to deny the annexation request into Cedar City, creating an island of annexed land with Van Trust proposed annexation.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Personnel, Jennifer.
Thank you. In the Sheriff's Office Patrol, Kyle Barrett was selected from an internal roster to receive a promotion from a part-time Reserve Deputy 1 to a full-time corporal beginning 8/16/2026. In the landfill, Eli Brown has completed all tasks and requirements to receive a promotion from a full-time Technician 1 to a full-time Technician 2 beginning 8/16/2026. In the Attorney's Office, Stephanie Hunter was selected from the most recent competitive interview selection process to backfill the vacant full-time, is that full-time? Part-time, I apologize, part-time legal assistant position effective 8/17/2026. In the Engineer Office, Latanya Heaton was selected from the most recent internal selection process to transfer from a full-time apprentice appraiser to a full-time administrative assistant effective 8/6/17/2026. In the Parks and Recreation Department, Evan Gray was selected from the most recent competitive interview and selection process to backfill the vacant part-time seasonal recreational technician position effective 8/17/2026. In the Justice Court, Jennifer Bishop was selected from the most recent competitive interview and selection process to backfill the vacant full-time Judicial Assistant 1 position effective 8/31/2026. In Sheriff's Office Corrections, Michael Meekum has completed all tasks and requirements to receive a promotion from a full-time K-9 Deputy 1 to a full-time K-9 Deputy 2 beginning 8/30/2026. Trishelle Parsons was selected from the most recent competitive interview and selection process to backfill the vacant full-time Deputy 1 position effective 9/13/2026. Justin Hatch has elected to return to employment and has agreed to backfill the vacant part-time Corrections Deputy 1 Reserve position effective 8/16/2026. In the road department, Kobe Brunson, Braxton Brindley, and Chris Copeland have all completed tasks and requirements to receive a promotion from full-time maintenance 1s to full-time maintenance 2s, effective August 30th, 2026.
Thank you.
I'll move to approve items 1 through 8 as outlined.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Do we have anything for county boards?
I don't.
Then we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you for your attendance.